It's Wednesday and we have our favorite doc Steph with us, which always makes me so happy, you guys, so happy. And we were just talking, and both of us have come back from little break vacation-y things, which is kind of cool. So I was in Asheville, North Carolina for an impromptu couple of days, and Stephanie, you've come to Asheville before because you were in Chapel Hill, right?
Yes,
Did you?
beautiful. Such a beautiful area.
Oh, it's so lovely, and it's so weird because it's supposed to rain here for like 10 days, and like the weather has been so unpredictable, meaning, because I do understand that weather is weather, therefore unpredictable, but like you'll look at the 10-day forecast, and usually what'll happen is it'll move this way or that way, and it's like you look at the 10-day forecast one day, it's all rain, the next day it's like all sunny. It's just like crazy. Is it being crazy over where you are in California?
It really is. And it's like, I hate to complain because normally the weather is like always great, but I have to tell you for the last like 6 or 7 months, it's been so like gloomy and cloudy out here in Southern California. And it's like literally the last 2 days have been like warm and sunny, which is like, we're like finally, but it's just been so gloomy and cold here. And I, well, not as cold as it gets like up north, but for us little, warm blooded people, it's cold here.
Well, and it's so funny because I'm kind of the opposite. Like, I probably could live like in Scotland or Portland or somewhere because I'm just like, it rains. Like, I lived in Arizona for a short amount of time, and I learned I do not like the desert. I'm happy for all of you who love the desert living, but I could feel like the life and moisture being sucked out of my skin because I've lived in humid climates all the time.
Right.
And it just felt like enforced happiness, which just made me kind of angry. So if it's too much sun, I'm like cranky. So I guess I'm built different than everyone. Joanne says it's overly warm, but showering off and on where she lives in Florida.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
and
was
Joanne
just
says you like cool and comfortable, and it's totally true. Like what I want, because I would love 1 or 2 sunny days a week. That would be lovely. I don't need gloomy all the time, but if I could be between 65 and 75 degrees all the time.
perfect. I know what you mean. That's kind of how it's been here. Like even though it's been gloomy outside, like overcast, we still have like yeah, like 65 to 70-degree weather. So like that's the one thing where I'm like, okay, like I can work with this. But then when it's been gloomy like nonstop for weeks and weeks on end, then I'm like, okay, I just need one sunny day. Like just give me one day and I'll be happy. And I was actually just in Florida visiting family with my husband, and it was like, even though it was hot and humid, it was at least sunny every day. So I was like, oh, perfect. Like I'm getting my sun for the week.
That's awesome. I think it's so fascinating, and maybe this is something we could talk about another time, even, because eventually we will run out of things to test if it's toxic or not.
That's true.
One
One day
would
we will.
think, perhaps not, that some people love rain and cloudy, and some people don't. I almost wonder, because it's not quite like an introverted, extroverted split or anything like that. Um, but it's just such an interesting concept. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I agree. It's interesting what people kind of tend to vibe with a little bit more and like they feel more comfortable in. It's like so interesting.
Well, and I'm going to let you, just in case, there shouldn't be anyone who doesn't know you, but maybe someone's watching the replay because they don't know you yet. So I'm going to switch to the big screen and let you tell them a little bit about yourself, your practice, and some of the things that you can do to help people.
All right, sounds good. All right. So thank you, Kathy, again for having me on your show. I love coming on. I come on her show once a month, and our favorite topic to talk about is toxins, environmental chemicals that are found within the home and within our environment that can overload our body's ability to detoxify them out via our 6 different detoxification pathways that we inherently have. And then what occurs is what I like to call mystery illnesses or mystery symptoms that occur from this toxic buildup within us. Because if we aren't able to properly excrete these chemicals, then we start to develop different symptoms, and they're essentially just recirculating within the body. And so my big goal is to spread awareness in these different chemicals that are found within the home and within products that we use. And we've gone over quite a lot of stuff already. Today, we're going to be going over cooking sheets, cutting boards, things like that. But we've gone over quite a few different things. So that's been really fun. But a little bit about me as, so that is a big part of my practice, is the environmental toxin reduction, and then working on supporting the body's innate detoxing mechanisms. But I am a DC by training. So I got my doctorate in chiropractic years ago. And now what I do is I focus in on finding the root cause of what could be at the crux of somebody's digestive issues. And so I really hone in on the gut health, and I hone in on the liver health, because those are two really big areas that our body uses to excrete different chemicals. And we know now, by being exposed to stress, environmental chemicals, processed foods, animal products, things like that can really provide a lot of disruption to our body. So I truly, truly believe in the body's innate healing mechanisms. And by reducing our exposure to chemicals, adding in good nutrients and foods, and supporting our body's ability to detoxify, can heal so much of what we're dealing with. I did my residency at TrueNorth Health Center, which is a world-renowned water fasting facility in Santa Rosa, California, under Dr. Alan Goldhammer, which is where I was really exposed to learning about detoxification in the first place. And that's really what kind of transferred my practice into chiropractic, into more holistic healing, and wanting to work more broadly with people, because I feel like this is such an important piece to help support everybody. So again, my specialties are environmental toxin reduction and also gut health. I work specifically with small intestinal bacteria and fungal overgrowth, as well as mast cell activation syndrome and mold illness as well. So so that's a little bit about me. And again, I'm always on Kathy's show once a month at least, talking about all the fun stuff. I can't wait to dive into today's topic.
Well, thank you. And it's so awesome. And it's so awesome that, because now every time you talk, every time we get on, I'm thinking of all these other shows we should do, because it seems like there is a plethora of people who are going on SIBO diets and things like that. So that probably is something we should talk about at some point. I know it is or at least I've heard from other people who are like whole food plant-based, that it can be even harder because you cut out so many things.
Definitely. Absolutely. That actually would be a great topic. I would love to spend an hour talking about SIBO. It's so underdiagnosed. And just a quick tidbit about it is that so bacteria overgrowth is really just an overgrowth of good bacteria, commensal bacteria, within the small intestine. And normally this bacteria is housed within the large intestine, and symptoms that we see arise from it are bloating, like that's the hallmark symptom, but we see all kinds of GI complaints, like bloating, distension, acid reflux, nausea, feeling like food sitting in your stomach. And what occurs is then these symptoms start to create, not these symptoms, the bacteria that's overgrown can cause leaky gut, which then creates more systemic overall inflammation, and we can see fatigue and joint pain and headaches. And SIBO, a lot of these gut issues can be caused from toxic burden from different chemicals, processed foods, stress, decreasing gut motility. And then one last fun statistic about SIBO is that up to 70% of irritable bowel syndrome diagnoses are actually SIBO. So it's very underdiagnosed, like extremely, and not treated correctly most of the time. And so that's why I personally dealt with this. So part of my why in this is that I dealt with a lot of gut issues and toxic burden and hormone imbalances from my environment, from things that I was eating, from what I was exposed to, and things like that. So and learned how to heal myself through that whole journey. So that's why I'm so passionate about bringing awareness to all of this stuff.
So, okay, one more question about this, and then I promise we'll get to the other boards. I got in trouble last week because we didn't do the topic. Someone was like, you did not do the topic, but we did a lot of, because just so everybody knows what you're in for with plant-based chat, sometimes we try to always talk about the main thing that I say, but sometimes we do adjacent things, right? So if we didn't talk about cutting boards, maybe we would talk about knives. Who knows? It's the wild, wild west here on plant-based chat, right? So with SIBO, how do you get diagnosed? Is there a test that you can take?
That's such a great question. So the common test a lot of people use, and it's actually not able to diagnose it. I just want to mention this really quickly, is people will get like a stool test, like one of those comprehensive stool tests, and they'll, see that they have high levels of certain bacteria, and they'll say, oh, okay, well, this might mean that I have SIBO. But actually, since SIBO is in the small intestine, when we're doing stool tests, that's mainly measuring the large intestine. So that's not diagnostic. So I just wanted to mention that piece really quickly. The only definitive test that can actually measure it is a breath test. So it's a 9-bag breath test that will get sent to you, and you breathe into, it's like 1 puff of air that you breathe into a bag every 15 minutes. So it's 9 bags, 15 minutes to 20 minutes. And what it's actually measuring is it's measuring, so with that gas that's in the small intestine, with the bacteria within the small intestine, they're releasing gases. There's 3 different gases that they can release. So that's how the breath test is measuring. It will get sent to a lab, and then they measure the different gases that might be present, and then they show it to you on the chart. And there's different criteria for diagnosing whether you have it, how much of it you have, things like that. And then that overall determines the treatment course, because each gas is different, requires a different type of treatment with herbs and things like that. And then also how long you do it for. So how long you do the treatment for, depending on how high your gas levels are.
That's fascinating.
And that's fascinating. Right?
And I'm so ADHD today already anyhow. Like, I'm just like, ooh, let's talk about that. Because I'm like, I bet insurance doesn't cover that test, right?
Yeah. Well, so actually, it depends. It depends. So there's different kinds of gas tests that you can do. The best one is called TrioSmart. It measures all 3 of the dominant gases. It's the only one that measures all 3. It came out in 2020, and it's called TrioSmart. And sometimes insurances can cover up to half of it. It just depends on the test, and the test is around $300. But conventional GI doctors, they actually will run the tests in-house too, but they don't usually use the TrioSmart, and they usually don't measure all 3 gases. Usually that one will get fully covered by insurance. It'll usually measure 2 gases. So that's still better than nothing. So for someone that might not be able to, afford the $300 test, which it is expensive, can go the route of seeing their GI doctor and then get that paid for and just get that test done. So there's different options for sure.
I love that. And the only reason I'm thinking is because my doctor before this was a functional medicine doctor. So a lot of my tests were not covered.
Oh, I know. So many of those functional medicine tests, unfortunately, they're great tests, but they're expensive, and they're usually not covered. So,
Okay, before anybody else at me, okay, two things. We're going to talk about the stuff. Kathy Sabo just came on and said, I think I saw an Instagram thing from you, Doc Steph. Were you an Olympic swimmer?
Oh my gosh. Oh, how fun. Thanks for following on Instagram. So I wasn't officially on the Olympic team in 2016. I've actually missed the Olympic team by 1 spot. But I was the Olympic team alternate. But my swimming career prior to that, I was on the U.S. national team for 4 to 5 years, traveling the world, competing for Team USA and world championships and different meets that were held in China and Russia and all these things. And I did win nationals here and U.S. Opens and things like that. So just didn't make it quite to the tippy top, but I was very close.
That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago. It was I only retired 7 years ago, but since when I retired, I went straight into school, and then, now my whole life is with this, and it's so funny to think about my swimming career, because it was so long, not so long ago, but it was just a whole other world ago.
I totally understand, because I used to be a musician. I played in the Louisiana Philharmonic. So and I was a web developer after that, and then now I do what I do now. So I think it's cool. I feel like when you get to switch what your thing is, and we could talk about this another time too, I think it just opens up this whole world to you, and you get to see things so many different ways. Anyone who's been a service worker or waited tables has said everyone should have to be a service worker, like a retail worker or wait tables, because you see things very differently.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a small way, although I still think everyone should have to do it, because people are people are not nice. Be nice to the people who are trying to help you. They're trying to help you. So that's my
Definitely.
service announcement for the day.
Oh, I love that. No, that's a great. I love that, and I agree with you. And I think that's really cool. I love to hear about your story too. I think that would be a great chat sometime too, just like talking about things like how certain things can help you in like your career, or like what your journey is. Like it's all amazing. Like when you think about it and you piece it together, how it helps you and what you're currently doing and things like that. It's just everything happens for a reason. It's very, very interesting.
Well, and life is such a cool journey. I mean, there are times that it's no fun at all and it really
Yeah.
kind of sucks. So if
Yeah.
if someone's out there going through something like that now, please don't feel like I'm trying to like gloss over that either. I've had my own dark times, but like when you get your first depression or something like that when you're young and you think this is never going to change. I feel like the older you get and the more you do, the more you see there's so much change and so much movement that it makes it a little bit easier when you get those hard times.
Definitely. I love it. What a motivational talk this morning.
You-
Morning here in California, afternoon for you, but
That's awesome. Joanne says, I went to University of Colorado on a swimming scholarship. I did not know that, Joanne. I know that you are often in the pool. You tell me that. You've gone swimming. And Justine says she was a waitress once. Epic fail. I kind of made it my own. So like sometimes I would go, hi, I'm Kathy and I'm your food consultant for the evening. Let me help you decide what you really want. So you can see the growth from there to here, right? I was already on this path.
oh,
So
that's amazing.
let's talk about cutting boards first because I got some out. And there's one
Yeah.
I think is totally going to be suspect, but I have no idea. I'm going to have to look up and see what stuff is in it. But these Eli home boards are some kind of composite something or other. And I'm going to
Okay.
look. I have just the generic cutting board.
Yeah, awesome. Is that plastic?
It's got to be some kind of plastic, but it's like,
Like a hard plastic?
yeah, it's like the ones that are usually used in restaurants. They're pretty hefty. Things don't chip off of these. Like you can see where there's some knife marks, but it's not exactly self-healing, but it doesn't chip or anything. Plain old wood and bamboo.
Awesome. This will be fun. We can go over all of this stuff. I wrote out my notes for this because there's a lot to know about when it comes to the different types of cutting boards for sure. So I'm happy that we always talk about what we'll talk about beforehand because it allows me to definitely prepare because especially when it comes to cutting boards, you would be surprised at the amount of info out there and what to know about them. So,
Well,
yeah.
and that's the thing. I never thought about them. And when I looked in, I picked out the kinds. And if we need to push off like bakeware to another time, which we may, that's okay. We'll push that one off and really dive deep on this if need be. I'm going to mute myself, look up the Eli home, and then I will try and come back and.
Perfect. And the Eli home, I think you said may have been composite. If it is, then that's, I know a lot about composite wood, so we can always talk about that. But I'll go into just starting to talk a little bit about what you really want to look for first when you're picking a cutting board, and then we can talk about the different kinds. So because there's all different kinds. There's the plastic, there's the composite woods, there's even glass, there's solid wood, bamboo. One called, I'm always mispronounce this, but I believe it's like Epicurean wood fiber cutting boards, all different kinds of things like that. So we can dive into each of them, the pros and cons of them. But I'll go ahead and first just talk about what it is that you would want to look for first. So the ideal cutting board is going to be solid wood. And then you also want it to have an edible natural finish. A lot of them are used with these mineral oils, and I'll go into explain why those aren't good for you in a second. You also want to make sure that they are sustainably sourced. That's always good to look for. Adhesive free, petroleum free, and then you also want to make sure that they don't have any antimicrobial chemicals. So that's kind of a good leeway into talking about plastic cutting boards. And I think one of the ones there that Kathy showed, the one that kind of was like a whiter color, that looked to be, to me, it looked to be more of like a really, really tough, like hard plastic, which I usually do see at a lot of restaurants and things like that. And that seems to be the most common cutting board that a lot of people will buy. I know I had that for a very long time. And I also backtracked really quickly in the importance of why to pick a good solid cutting board, because a lot of them are made with harmful chemicals. And so we are constantly cutting our food on there, cutting our fruit, cutting a lot of different things. And essentially it's the same thing we've talked about before, like what you're storing your food in or what you're cooking in, things like that. It will leach into the food that you're eating. And so that's why it's important. Whenever you're starting on your toxin-free journey, I always say, always look to what it is that you're drinking and then what it is that you're like maybe storing your food in, or whatever is coming into contact with your food, because that's directly going into your body. And so that's why it's important to definitely be a little bit aware of the cutting boards. So we can start with the plastic. So what happens with the plastic is, and she had mentioned this as well, Kathy mentioned this, is that she started to notice that there's some little like knife grooves or knife cuts that are within the cutting board. And with the problem with that is that when you have those deep grooves that are in the cutting board, that actually allows for bacteria to harbor within the area. So that's just one thing to keep in mind when it comes to the plastic cutting boards. Another piece is that these actually start to degrade over time with use. And so with that, what occurs with that is it's allowing tiny pieces of plastic to migrate into your food. So that's another reason why it's important to try to be a little bit more aware of when it comes to the plastic piece. The third one is that a lot of people will actually wash their plastic cutting boards in a dishwasher. And that's a big no-no, just because that is actually allowing for leaching of more of these endocrine disrupting chemicals, which are disrupting our hormone system, to leach out from the plastic due to the heat from it being washed. So if you do have a plastic cutting board, making sure to wash, sorry, I can't speak today, with just soap and using like a scrub brush is going to be really important in that piece. And then the final piece
is all I have to say. Oops.
It's okay. And all this stuff that I mentioned, like I'm not Miss Perfect. Like I know I say this all the time, but I've been there, done that with all this kind of stuff too. So when I found this all out too, I'm just like, oh dear.
Oh, and we've talked about that before too. Yeah. And now I want to see, I'm trying to find this information. So like with the Eli home, it's a little bit weird. It's like crafted from high density pine leaf sustainable material. This fiber wood cutting board is the ideal. Let me go back down. There was, that's just telling me. Solid, crafted from solid and durable fiber wood material, which means it's obviously not just a piece of wood, right? And it's obviously not. It is supposed to be kind of self-healing, dishwasher safe.
Okay.
It says this fiber wood cutting board is the eco-friendly choice for your kitchen. Obviously, I know that those are all buzzwords as well. I'm just trying to get to, like, the fact that it's not saying a whole lot right out the gate makes me a little bit nervous. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think I have an idea of what that one might be. I think it might be
here, let me share it really quick.
Okay.
Let me come back over here. Let's see. Okay, so this is just one in Amazon. So, and they're not cheap. Mm-hmm. And so it's the ones that look like this. And so you can kind of see it has some different things, but it looks obviously like fiber-ish, you know, like it doesn't look like a solid piece of wood if it's next to.
Do you think it's like composite pieces of, like composite wood pieces, and that may have been like, because that's usually what I see when it comes to those kind of like not fully solid wood cutting boards, is usually they're like maybe like a composite wood type thing. Do you think
I think it is, because it's calling itself fiber wood, which is not really a thing, right? I think composite, it would be the real word. So it's probably wood pulp that has been pressed together in some way. I mean, obviously, it's not my thing, because then I have another, I have another thing I want to show you after this to ask about. But
Oh, awesome. Okay.
to me, this is the only one that's like super questionable, as in far as I don't know what all is going into it. But
Yeah,
like,
and
so solid wood, and I agree, like the only thing about solid wood sometimes, okay, the thing about solid wood sometimes is if you're doing something that's going to be super messy and clean up, it can be really hard. Like I have one really quite large plastic cutting board. And so here, let me change over here. So if I'm making pasta or making homemade wonton wrappers or things like that, it's often a little bit easier. But I mean, you can flour more. So I can see how it could work.
right. Yes, absolutely. I know. I feel like I'm every like cook's like worst nightmare when I come into it. I'm like, and you're like, oh, it's so easy to use it on this, and I'm like, I totally get it. Trust me. So yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I have some good info when it comes to the composite wood type stuff. So I can definitely touch on that and like why those are. You want to be wary of those. But I'll finish up with the plastic really quickly because there was one other piece I wanted to mention about that, and then maybe we'll go into the composite wood. Does that sound good? We'll do that. Okay. Awesome. So the other piece I just really quickly wanted to mention about the plastic. So the few things that we talked about before was with the plastic. One, is that it's plastic, so over time it degrades and then it can start to leach little microplastics into the food and things that you're using. So that's and we know plastics are huge hormone disrupting chemicals, and they also disrupt our gut health as well. So that's one piece of it. The second piece is that the plastic starts to develop little grooves in there which harbor bacteria. So that's another piece that we want to be careful of. The third piece is that a lot of people will put them into dishwashers, which I did that notoriously so many times. And what's occurring there is because of the heat from the dishwasher, it's actually leaching out more of those chemicals, allowing them to come to the surface. So then, and those endocrine hormone disrupting chemicals. But the fourth piece of the plastic is that a lot of them are usually made with, and they'll buzzwords again, they'll say has an antimicrobial finish or things like that. And what's in that finish is, and they usually always have that on these plastic cutting boards, is the chemicals are microban and triclosan, which are very big endocrine disruptors. And those are actually like triclosan is something you can find in like a lot of hand sanitizers and soaps, like those conventional types of soaps that they'll say is antibacterial, good for you, put it on. And that's usually where you'll find a lot of that as well. So that was just another piece that I wanted to mention about the plastic cutting boards. But with the composite, what's usually occurring with those, so those are usually like pieces of wood that are glued together, and it doesn't have to be like one specific type of wood. It can be like different kinds, but sometimes it's like the same type of wood. But usually it's the pieces of wood that are glued together, and what they're glued, the adhesives to glue them together most often contain formaldehyde and other additives that are that we know are very toxic and also carcinogenic. So that's why it's important to be a little bit careful around the composite wood piece. But the other piece with that is they're often finished with a mineral oil. And the mineral oils, they're actually petroleum derived. So that's just another harmful chemical that we get exposed to with the composite wood. Now, that's usually what we see with composite woods. I'm sure there's some brands out there. I don't know all the brands of cutting boards out there, but I'm sure there's probably some good brands out there that maybe do use like a better type of material to glue them together. And that's again where it's going to be important to see, okay, like what is it that reaching out to the company and being like, what is it that you use to glue the pieces together? And that's something I always tell my patients and tell people that ask me, or when I go on these shows, to always reach out to companies, because even though you see composite wood, you don't necessarily need to run away. You can ask, what do you use as a finish? What do you use to glue them together? Because if you're looking for, what you want to look for is look for things that are like more of like an edible type and of safe finish. So things like MCT oil, coconut oil, walnut oil, linseed oil from flax seeds is another good one. And then when you're looking for things that are finished on there, like mineral oil finishes, make sure it's not petroleum based And then also it's not any like type of liqueur or anything like that. So those are kind of the big things when it comes to the composite wood. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So what I'm also trying to do is like, so I have some cutting board oil that is literally called mystery butcher block oil, or mystery. Well, I don't think I have the butcher block, but it's like mystery oil, and it doesn't tell you what it is. It's by, is it Boos, Boos? It's a big cutting board, and I believe they use, actually here, I'll go to the John Boos store, and they make these beautiful cutting boards. Actually, here, I'll show you some of the cutting boards.
Oh, yeah.
So they're making, and I don't know, would this kind of like, would this be considered what you were just talking about, the way, because it's got different pieces of wood together? Is that composite too? Or like, you know, like when you see a butcher block like that?
So I have to tell you, I actually can't see like your screen
Oh,
personally.
okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Everybody
mine.
else can see it. So like, you know, when there's a butcher block top or like a wood cutting board that maybe has a checkerboard pattern on it,
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
what we're seeing. And like, it's Boo's mystery oil that is literally, I think, a mystery. Let's see.
That's actually, I kind of chuckled to myself when you said it was a mystery oil because I was like, oh, that sounds
It's
good.
it's literally the name of it. I'm sure it's because they
Yeah.
are, because it says the Boost Block Mystery Oil penetrates deep into the grain of the wood surface to protect and revitalize. I am,
Mhm.
okay, let's go to, let me see if I can find the Boost site.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Here we go. Okay, let's see if they say more on it. I'm just surfing the web over here. That's what everybody's seeing. Seeing the pop-up for me to sign up for the Butcher Block giveaway. It says natural food safe ingredients, food grade oil, which doesn't really tell us exactly what we need to know. All natural food safe ingredients. Yeah, a spec sheet. Ooh, what is that? You guys, this is what I do all the time. Isn't this so exciting? Not at all. Not at all. Not oiled, well oiled. No, that's just like for if you were a seller person. So I'm coming back to you. And so you said, tell me the oils again, because I was also reading while you were talking about the oils. I feel like such a bad watcher because of that, but I wanted to get that because I know I have some of it, which seems like it would be suspect. But did you say linseed oil, or did I make that up?
No, yeah, linseed oil from flax seeds. And then
Oh,
also walnut oil, MCT oil, coconut oil are also good ones.
and Kelly is actually saying, it says, and let's see, let me go back to Kelly. No, I think she's talking about this. Are you talking about mystery oil, Kelly? And you found some stuff last time I didn't find too. Food safe mineral oil, carnival wax, and beeswax, which I know is not vegan, but that's not, I'm not finding that anywhere. But maybe, yeah. So Kelly says yes, that's what she found. So, and I don't know what carnival wax is. I know what beeswax. So mineral oil, would that
Is
be a
it
yes or a
Carnauba?
no?
Beeswax is actually, I did mention it because it's not vegan, but yes, that is actually a safe food grade, like one that can be used. Um, when she put, well, I'm just reading it really quickly. Oh, carnival wax. I wonder if she meant to put Carnauba wax, which is
Oh, she
Carna.
did. She's just corrected herself. I'm so sorry because
Okay.
since I don't know much about the waxes, I literally thought that was. Usually, I auto correct before it comes out of my mouth. Okay.
Yes.
So, and
Well,
Joanne
no,
says
you're good.
she's used coconut oil before.
No, that's great actually to use coconut oil. That's another good one. And yeah, I just read it there because I was thinking maybe it was a what do you call it? Like a autocorrect, like carnival wax. That's what I was wondering. But yeah, it's just a vegetable wax that gets used. So yeah, so that's actually fine too. So wait, so she said it's food safe mineral oil. Okay. So that's the thing. Whenever you see anything that says mineral oil, it usually is typically petroleum derived. So that's why I would reach out and ask them, where is this derived from? Because it's a byproduct of petroleum. So that's why you want to check in with that. The other two, I would be fine with the beeswax and the Carnauba wax in terms of exposure to toxins, right?
Okay.
And obviously the beeswax isn't going to be vegan, but yeah.
And so coconut oil will work, and you're saying linseed oil. I think we heard linseed oil when I bought some like super janky table at the thrift store, and Cheryl sanded it down. It looks beautiful. Like it had been in some kids thing, and they had like just really gone to town with crayons and gouged, but we got everything but one gouge perfectly fixed, and it looks beautiful because she used a lot of different oils on it. And that's a much more complicated thing than, but like I'm looking at now that I'm looking at my cutting boards instead of just getting them out to do something, like this bamboo is like ridiculously dry, and so is this wood one. Like they need some help.
Well, yeah, I know what you mean too. I'm really bad about applying like a nice oil because you're supposed to do it like once a month at least, and I'm terrible at remembering to do that. So that's another thing too, is that if you have like to get one of those not finishes, sorry, one of those oils to use that we talked about, whether it's the carnival wax, the coconut oil, the MCT oil, the linseed oil, and then the walnut oil. You want to use those like once a month on like your solid wood cutting board. But the other thing is, I'm glad that you brought up the bamboo piece because that's another common cutting board that people will use. So we so far have gone over plastic, and then we did the the composite wood, and then the other piece is also the bamboo, and that's actually very similar to the composite wood that usually more often than not, it's just pieces of bamboo that have been glued together. And again, they're using those adhesives that have formaldehyde in it to glue them together. And there have been some companies that I've seen, I haven't looked into it, but they claim that they're using formaldehyde-free adhesives. But again, it's just important to, again, just always ask like, well, what then is the adhesive being used to glue it together? But there are some that are using formaldehyde-free. So that's actually a plus there as well. But again, too, when it comes to the bamboo cutting board, the same thing with the composite. So it's the adhesives that they use, but also they're usually finished with that mineral oil that's a byproduct of the petroleum. So yeah. And the food safe mineral oil, again, they're probably saying that it's food safe, but it's still going to be a petroleum byproduct. So just to be wary of that, I would be a little bit more cautious around it personally.
And that totally makes sense to me because like again, when we're looking at things like this, and even some other things that aren't quite as particular as like when we're talking about food safe stuff, because we know there's lots of greenwashing, there's pride washing, and breast cancer awareness washing. Now there's all the washings now, right? Where everything looks perfect and for whatever you're looking for, because that's what they're doing in the marketing. And it's a whole other thing, just like we talked about in cookware or in cleaners. You may not make perfect choices, and I think very few people do. But to have what we're trying to do is really set up this amount of information so you can decide where you're cutting the line off. Because even if you're vegan, right, you drive a car, and some part of that car may be animal derived. A lot of times there's animal products in tires, which means in bike tires, which means unless you walk, right? So, and it doesn't make you a bad vegan because you drive a car. Just like it also doesn't make you a bad person if you're like, I just bought $30 worth of dishwashing soap and I have to use it. None of that makes you bad or less than. It's just having that information that maybe the next one you buy, you might choose to buy something different. You might not. I will say, I'm loving the branch also.
Yay!
Yeah.
Oh, I would be so happy to hear. And since you mentioned that, I want to bring it up again because it truly, I think, is one of the best cleaners out there. And I was just at my parents' and in Florida, and they had just recently gotten Branch Basics, and so we were cooking with, we made like a dinner and in a stainless steel pot, and we had like really burnt the bottom of the pot, and I was like, hold on, let me show you how to best like clean this up, because we were like scrubbing at it and nothing was happening. So they have this powder called Oxygen Boost, and it is the Branch Basics, and it is hands down the best thing I've ever used in my entire life to clean my air fryer, to clean anything like my stove, because it is just what you do is it's like a powder, and you just like pour it over the surface you're trying to clean, and then you just apply a little bit of friction, so you want to agitate it a little bit, so and then you put a little water over it, agitate it, scrub it a little bit, let it sit for like an hour. Come back, and I'm not even kidding you, when you run it under water and you use a little scrub and you just like scrub whatever it was you were trying to get, oh my gosh, it comes off so, my dad was just like, oh my God, like it just came right, what did you use?
And I'm gonna film the ceramic top cleaning, but what I did is I did some spray. So like Kathy's saying, it's Branch Basics is the name of the company, and so basically their cleaning line is two products. One is a concentrate, a liquid concentrate, and the other one is this Oxy Boost, which is kind of like a Bon Ami sort of scrubby sort of idea, right? Obviously, it's not a one-for-one. And so when you buy the kit, and I have an unboxing of the kit, and so I got it with all the plastic bottles. You can get it with all the glass bottles, and that's probably the bigger investment. But you take this bottle, and so there's, I think the one that has the highest concentrate is the laundry detergent, but you use like 2 tablespoons a load. So in the end, it's not very much. I think then the bathroom cleaner is heavier. Then there's the counter spray and the foaming hand soap. But they say you can put it on your face and wash your face with it. So it reminds me of like a Castile style soap sort of thing. But yeah, I sprayed the spray, and then I put the scrubby and wet the spray and let it sit for a little while, and then it scrubbed off, because I'm notorious for boiling over pasta or something if I don't put my little pasta you can't boil over me thing in my pot. Because I'm just a little ADHD. If I'm teaching a class, I have great excuse because I'm like doing all the things, but I'll be like, oh, look, I'll read about this or something like that.
I love it.
I know you have to go a little early, so I want to ask you a couple of questions, and then maybe we can finish up with some wood, and then we can cover back any of this. If you wouldn't mind emailing me the name of the oils, I will put it up on the YouTube so people have it, because I've forgotten already again. I remember 2. And so that's not helpful.
I know. There's like
So Kathy had several questions, so I want to not skip her. Is baby oil safe? And I would think that's mineral oil, correct?
Yeah, and I don't think that would be, is that food grade? Like, I don't even know, but you want to make sure it's like edible first, is like that what you want to make sure when you're using it. But then again, I don't even know specifically what baby oil is derived from, so that's also something
I think it used to be like because remember we put petroleum jelly in baby oil. I think it comes from the same stuff. But we also feed small children and sick elderly people Jell-O and gelatin. So those are the things that don't match in my head. 2 off-topic questions, both from Kathy. Is it true that once mold gets in a glass jar, it kind of grows into it and you can't really ever get rid of it? I just threw out a jar the other day. I usually recycle them for filtered water. I never heard that.
Yeah, no, you should be able to, when with a glass jar, you should be able to clean it out and then be able, like Branch Basics is actually really wonderful for that. But you should be able to clean it out and then just kind of let it sit for a little bit, and then it should be good to go. So that's not something that I would,
because I think it's solid, so it can't get its little tentacles in there. But I think with plastic, it can grow into plastic sorts of things. From my
You're completely right. So, mold is such a tricky little thing, but what it does is it's like what you just said, it has its little like tentacles, and I can't remember like the word for it, but basically that's how it will attach itself into a surface, into like a porous surface, is it's like anything that it's able to kind of leach into that's not like a super hard surface. So, and the thing when it comes to mold too is that what makes it just like generally like within the home is why spraying it with like, usually like a mold killer or something that actually aggravates the mold typically, and then it will just it will deepen its tentacles into the surface and will release more spores in the air. And so that's why usually when it comes to cleaning out mold from the home, and we could do a whole talk on mold probably at some point, because I find that to be a trigger for a lot of things as well. So we could see, we're coming up, how you just said like, oh, we'll probably run out of things that, toxin free, but we could probably go on and on for like so many things,
Decades.
But yeah, when it comes to the glass, yeah, for sure, decades. When it comes to the glass, that's usually a really easy. And also the thing too is that because if it's something that you're storing things in, things like that, it's usually not a really like a really bad type of mold, like a really serious type. Like how like within water damaged buildings we see Stachybotrys, which is like that black mold and things like that. Typically those ones that are growing like on the foods and things like that, those ones are like much easier to clean out versus like the really dark types of mold.
Okay. Justine has a cutting board made from corian, just like solid surface like corian countertops.
Oh, so it's like marble, right?
Yeah, but it's manufactured. So it's kind of like what I have here. So I don't know that it's plastic, but it's some sort of non-natural material that's solid.
I don't actually know about that. I'm not super familiar with that type of cutting board. I know that they make glass and like marble type cutting boards, and those are good because those the only thing with those is that they can be a little bit damaging to your knife because they're super hard, but I know that those are good to use. But when it comes to the corian, I'm not sure actually.
Okay. And then one last question, and then we're going to get you out of here. Oh, where did the question go? I know that also Kathy bought something called vegan wood wax, and I looked that up. Kathy, where'd your other question? Yeah, here we go. If you really burn a stainless steel pan badly and it gets nearly black inside, if you scour it, it stays darkish. Is that safe to use or not?
So you mean like if you burn it, but then you just continue to kind of cook over it?
Well, I think you burn it and then you're trying to clean it. So you're scouring it, but all the dark stuff doesn't come off. Is it still safe to use if it doesn't look all silver and shiny?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think so. I feel like I would be like totally fine to use. I actually have that in a couple of my pans. So it's just from overuse and using it a lot. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that.
And this is not a toxin-free cleanser, but if you did something really horrible and it's affecting the taste of your food, Cheryl has cleaned things with the Barkeeper's Friend, which I'm sure is on the toxin list. But it truly will clean. It's not scratching. So like, let's say if it was between you using that and getting a really good set of stainless steel at the thrift store for almost nothing and then cleaning them a couple of times, I would do that.
Yeah,
but, instead of throwing something away. But we've only used it on in dire situations. But Cheryl's always in charge when I burn something super bad and make a mess because I don't have the patience to clean it up. And she will get every speck.
Wow, that's amazing. That's incredible, actually. Like you guys balance each other out so well, because that's so nice too. Because then you don't have to deal with doing that if she likes to get in there and do it herself. That's awesome.
Yeah, you can always tell who hand washed the dishes. I try not to hand wash because I'm just like, okay, this just needs to be done, and then I come back and I'm like, oh look, I need to do it again. Look at that. Well, thank you. I'm not a big fan. So much for coming on. I'm going to make sure to get you off because you have another appointment. Make sure if you have some questions, go ahead and put them, if you're watching the live or the replay, put them down below on YouTube or Facebook. If I don't know, I'll try and ask Dr. Steph, and we'll see how all that turns out. And I will look forward to talking to you next month, and we'll figure that out later
Yes, we'll figure
today.
out the next topic. The one thing I wanted to just quickly mention is we never talked about I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, but officially said what the best cutting board is, and it's solid wood cutting board. And you know what? I'm making a list, and I will send you my favorite brands that I know about. I know there's other kinds as well, but using like a solid wood, maple and walnut are best because they're like a little bit harder to use, harder like surface. But that will be like your best bet when it comes to like a toxin-free one. Again, the glass and marble ones are good. They just can be a little bit hard on the knives. So, but in terms of toxin-free, making sure that you're just checking with companies about what it is they're using for adhesives, mineral oil, or any type of finish, things like that. And then ideally trying to opt for maybe like a glass, marble, or solid wood cutting board. So, but I'll send you the list of them.
That sounds great. And Justine wants us to talk about ball jar lids at some time. Some of hers are corroding with acidic contents.
Oh yeah, we can definitely talk about that.
Okay.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, have an amazing day. Welcome home, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everybody.